Welcome to this presentation of You Are Teaching a Course Online. Did you do it right? This is going to be a fun one. I actually like to do this presentation a lot just because it allows me to talk with faculty or others who have done the course online and they're really excited, and I just love to come in and say, hey, did you do it right? And they just look at me kind of like, well, what do you mean? And so what I'm about to present to you today are some of the criteria that I've come to learn through the nearly 10 years that I've had working with distance learning education, especially online courses, etc., at Cal State San Bernardino. Some of the issues and challenges that I've encountered, as well as sort of coming up with a very quick and dirty way of evaluating your course, even though it's already created, to make sure that it meets the basic level of quality matters for being an effective online course. Now, the agenda for today will be just a little bit of introduction, what I just did, talk about who can benefit from this session, some technicalities of instructional design, practical observations that I would like to share with you, and then we'll jump into what I believe are the necessary components of an online course. I will touch quickly on quality matters, which is a rubric developed to measure the quality of online course, online delivery, and online design, and I'll provide a few concluding remarks. So a little bit about me. Who am I? My name is Mauricio Cadavid. I work for Cal State University San Bernardino. I've been an instructional designer for a few years as a title, but I've actually worked for online and distributed learning, now called academic technology and innovation, for nearly 10 years. The end of May actually will be 10 years. I've done both course development for face-to-face, but mostly distance learning and online. I also do consulting for iPads and iPad integration in courses. I'm a system administrator for Blackboard as well as Moodle. I've taught at conferences, written papers on distance learning, etc. This is something that I really enjoy doing, and it allows me to see how it progresses and how it moves forward, since so much stuff comes on a daily basis with regards to teaching, learning, instruction, and the online environment. So let's go ahead and continue, and I hope you enjoy this. Now, every presentation, if you've seen any of my presentations before, I always like to have a disclaimer. And the disclaimer is that this is not about you, this is about me. Unless you want to make it about you, then that is okay by me. What you're about to hear in the following few minutes is practices that I've encountered through discussions and through working with other faculty and other staff. And so what I have to say here is what has worked for me. Now, if at any point you hear anything that you disagree with, or that you believe that doesn't apply to you, it's perfectly fine. It's okay. There is not a magic method or a magic formula for making this sort of topics to be one size fits all. So I'm perfectly fine with that. If, on the other hand, you discover that anything that I say is something that you can use, then please be my guest and use it and implement it, and that's what we are here for. Okay, so let's have some fun. Now, who can benefit from this? If you answer yes to any of the following statements, then definitely this is for you. If you've taught a course before, you're thinking of teaching online or distance learning before, if you actually think that online teaching is not for you, if you're just simply curious about distance education, or if you think that you know everything about teaching, everything that there is to know about teaching and learning, then this is for you. If you don't have anything else to do right now and somebody told you, go ahead and watch this presentation, then this is for you as well. Okay? Now, before jumping into the actual components of distance learning, there are some technicalities of instructional design. One of those is the ADDIE model is still relevant. If you haven't taught before online or blended, or if you haven't come across this model of ADDIE, some may actually say that it's a little bit outdated. You know, ADDIE came after rapid prototyping, and now it's going back to rapid prototyping. But I find that it's still very simple and straightforward. And ADDIE stands for analyzing. So it stands to analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. Now, in the previous ADDIE models, this was pretty linear. You first analyzed the needs that you know, for the course, for the students, for the instructor. Then you put some sort of design together. Okay, you would share it with your faculty, etc. Then you would start to develop the course. Okay, once the course was developed, you would implement the course, and then you evaluate. But the particular model that I have here in front of me puts evaluate in the center of the presentation. And what I like about that is that we see that at every stage of the process, when you are analyzing the needs, you're also evaluating the needs. When you are designing your course, you're also evaluating the design. When you begin to develop the course, you're evaluating that development. And at every step, things are changing and modifying until you move to the next one. When you are ready to implement, as it is, you know, this presentation about, meaning your course is done, you're ready to teach it, it starts in a few weeks. Now we are in the evaluation process of, well, did you do it right? So this is very basic, you know, very straightforward as to what I believe is still a very relevant process. But you may ask yourself, well, why ADDIE? You know, aren't there other models? Yes, there are other models, but the reason why I really like this ADDIE model and how I find it relevant to teaching an online course is because, as this particular graphic shows you, it really takes education and learning into consideration for developing an online course. I'm a big fan of the original section of it, which is the analysis, and that is identifying what the objectives of the course are. Identifying what success would be for a student. If students getting, you know, a B, it's the way of measuring success. Well, how is your course designed to meet those that definition of success? How are you going to measure that success? Do you know your students? You know, are you providing any resource, etc.? So this is a very important area for me that I believe this particular ADDIE model really follows. Everything else, it's more in the technological part of it, or in the technical component of it, you know, the design. This is more for me. You know, how is the content, how are the ideas, how are the format, you know, how is the format of the course, how are you going to do the measures, and what kind of measures there are going to be, what are the activities, then developing the pilot, you know, the reviews of the pilot, some of the materials, etc. So the rest of it becomes, you know, more of the technicalities, but it really focuses, you know, and what this model brings into the discussion is that it really focuses on the course itself. You can take everything else away, but realize that it is important to analyze all the components that are important for a successful course, be it a face-to-face course, a flipped classroom, you know, or a flipped concept course, blended or fully online. So this is why I believe that the ADDIE model is still very much relevant to teaching the online course. Now, within that idea of analyzing, I like to have the faculty that I usually work with, or any conferences that I attend to ask yourself these questions, and that is, do you know your audience? ADDIE asks to, you know, do you know your students? What kind of students are there? Are they undergraduate, first-time freshman students? Are they graduate students? Are they working adults? You know, do you know how they learn? Do you know what time they have available for their courses? So I'm hoping that even though you've developed your course already, that you can tell me if I were to ask you, do you know your students? And you can say yes. If I ask you, would you take this class if you were a student in it? I would hope that you say yes. Do your students have access to the necessary information to start the course? So is there an orientation course or an orientation module where you provide students with the necessary information for them to know where the syllabus is, the navigation, what the course schedule is, where they're going to be completing their assignments, if there are discussions, where the discussions are, what are the due dates for some of the assignments, where do they find their grades, how do they communicate with each other, etc. If the course was to be taught tomorrow, would you be able to say that students have access to all the basic necessary information to start the course? Now, if you said yes, then the next question is the information clear and concise? Is your syllabus matching what is on your learning management system or on your own website? Does your syllabus say or provides information that is not clear or information that you need to clarify once the student goes into the course? If you say, no, the information is not clear and concise, then I would definitely recommend that you take a few minutes and make sure that the information provided in your syllabus and in your course match and that it is understandable. You can do like a 7-11 test. Have someone that you know, a colleague or a student from a previous course, etc., go through your course and just take a look at it. If they're able to understand what is needed of them, and if they don't have no questions or comments, or if they're not confused about any particular part of the course, then you've done a really good job. Now, going along with having a good structure and providing the necessary information, clear and concise, are the course objectives laid out clearly? If a student is taking your course, your online course, the first time that they take an online course, would they be able to know what is expected of them? What are the course objectives? Are they clear? Can a student actually relate to those objectives and know that this could be achievable? If the objectives are laid out clearly, then the next question is, what about the learning outcomes? If you told the students, these are my objectives for the course, this is what you should expect, do students know how they are supposed to be assessed in achieving those objectives, through the learning outcomes? What about the assessments? Are you ready to say at this particular point of your having your course ready that you have a list of all of your assessments, that you know when the quizzes will be done, when the discussions will be done, when the assessments will be done? Are they clear and completed, and are they reflective of what it is on your course schedule and on your layout of the course? If you answer yes, that's very good. This takes us to something that I touched on, which is, does the syllabus structure matches the course structure? It's very, very important that in an online environment, we as faculty minimize confusion. Okay, we don't want to give students a map, on how to navigate a city, and then have the map not reflect road closures or detours or any sort of road hazards, right? How are we going to expect the students to navigate through the city if we're not giving them the proper map? So thinking of that as the syllabus being the structure of the course the students can follow, how is that reflected on your actual online course? Now, have you identified any potential issues with the course design? Meaning, if you know your students and your audience, you know the assignments that they're going to do. Perhaps in one of the assignments you have them submit a particular file format, a video, an audio, etc. Have you taken into consideration any possible issues with, per se, the student is not going to be able to load a file that is larger than 5 megabytes because your school administrator for the learning management system has not provided enough space for the students to load a video that is more than 5 megabytes? If that is the case, have you considered then using other sort of avenues, say YouTube, for the students to upload the video into YouTube, make it private, and then share it with you? You know, are there issues that if a student is going to take an exam on a tablet or a mobile device, that the exam that you have developed for the particular course can be taken on a tablet, or is it an exam that only works on a laptop or a desktop? You know, so that's what I mean about potential issues with the course design. And then lastly is, you know, do you have a backup plan in case of technology failure? I think by now we have learned that if it is technology is bound to fail. It may not fail often, or it may not fail greatly, but it will fail just like anything else that is reliable about, you know, technology. So having a plan B if the students, you know, if your learning management system is going to or possibly may fail during the weekends because of a technical issue, a network issue, natural disaster, you know, issue, God forbid, etc. How are the students going to be able to complete the assignment if technology is not working? So these are initial observations that I like to have each of us considered when we, you know, think that our course is complete, that it's finished, is ready to go, and if not, if there are any no's in here, then at least you can go back, identify them, and plan accordingly. Okay, so the time that I've worked with faculty, I support a little bit of 120 distance learning courses, out of which about 80 of them, maybe about 75 of them are fully online. I'm also working right now with an external company from Dallas on developing fully online programs for the Masters in Teacher Leadership here at Cadavid San Bernardino. And regardless of what I read, where I go, what I listen, there seems to be 5 particular areas that I consider are the 5 necessary general components of an online course. Now, these are basic. I'm not saying get these 5 things or these 5 areas and you're done and your course is an excellent course. I am not saying that. But what I'm saying is that at least, regardless of how well developed, extravagant, and fabulous your course is, you have to make sure that at least these 5 areas that are included in your course, and those are an introduction and overview of the course, resources, content, assignment, and assessments. Okay, and I'm going to go over each of those so that we know, we have a better idea as to what they are. So does your course have an introduction and overview of the course? Meaning, what is the course? How is the course laid out? What are some of the expectations, you know, that you have for both the students as well as yourself expectations? Okay, compromises. And compromises means in an online format, if you know that you're not going to have access to the internet, or that you're not going to be able to answer emails or to issues on a Saturday or during the weekend, etc., how are you compromising with your students so that their grade doesn't get hindered, so that they don't take advantage of you in the course, and also so that they understand that if they're going to send you an email at a particular day at a particular time, that you will return their email, their phone call within the time that you and the students have set up and compromised on. And also, if you have told your students, if you send me an email during the weekend, I will not address it until Monday, to make sure that if you tell the students that you're giving them a response and that you expect them, you know, if you respond on a Monday, that you expect them to reply by the following day or within 24 hours, that you're both compromising on understanding those expectations. Okay, so it's very important. Most of these, if not all, should be laid out in your syllabus. It actually will take 1 page to describe what the course is, how is it laid out, what are some of the expectations, okay, and what are the compromises. Once you move this into your online format, you will realize that you need to add more information to this when it comes to expectations. You would have to add something about etiquette and how students communicate in discussion boards, etc. Now the next one is the resources, and what I consider resources is what is needed for the course, meaning are you providing the students with enough information on the book, the materials, the articles, okay, external links, perhaps online resources. If the students need to go to a particular website to read a particular article so that they can come back and complete a particular discussion, journal, or blog in your course, are you being clear as to where these resources are? In addition to this is special equipment. There is a particular course right now, one of several that I work with, where students are required to send a PSA video at the end of the course. And one of the reasons why the course had not been taught fully online for several years was because there was really no way to set of expecting students or providing students with the option of how to create a video. Creating videos before smartphones and tablets and YouTube and stuff was a little bit complicated. It required a lot of special equipment and editing tools, etc. Now, the faculty simply says, using your smartphone or tablet or just webcam with a microphone, I need you to submit a 2-minute video where you address, A, B, C, and D. Make sure the lighting is proper, make sure that audio is proper, etc. So, considering any special equipment and whether or not the students will have access to it, what I tell faculty on our campus is that if a student replies to them and says, I don't have a laptop, I don't have a tablet, I don't have a phone or a smartphone with a camera, what do I do? Then one of the options is to provide them with venues where, for the students to be able to either rent or have access to the special equipment that is required. So our university right now has a lending process where students can lend or rent for about 30 minutes or an hour. I think the maximum is 2 hours. A laptop, a Mac laptop that provides them with the webcam, the microphone, and even editing tools in case they want to. And so it sounds all fine and dandy, but we got to remember, if these are fully online students, what are they going to do if these students do not come to campus? What are some of the compromises that you can have for these students who will tell you that they don't have any of those things that are needed for the video and that they live 2 hours away from campus? So you have to consider those sort of special requests, and they come under the expectations and what's the one that I said? And compromises for the students. Okay. All right, moving right along. The next component is the content. Where is the actual content? What you are going to give to them. This is not what they are giving back to you. This is what you're giving to them, which is modules. Are you organizing your course in a way that is coherent? When you open a textbook, they have chapters, they have a table of content. As a faculty, you know that there's no perfect textbook. There's no perfect organization of information, even if it's on reading books, or I forget right now the name of when faculty put all of their articles, printed articles, in a binder and then give it to the students. Apologize for that, I forgot the name, but we cannot expect that publishers or anywhere that provides us with information is going to be organized in a way that it is. Well, you have control over your online course, and have you provided that content in a way that makes sense for the students, either in modules, in topics, in weeks. If you come to me and then you said, well, Mauricio, this is a quarter course. It's taught in 10 weeks, and each week they have to learn, let's say, 2 chapters. Well, Do they make sense? Do the students know that they're going to skip a chapter? Do they know that they're not going to see chapter 8 before they see chapter 11, etc.? It makes sense sometimes when you write it out, but when you put it in a student and it's 1 o'clock in the morning and the student is trying to understand what it is and how you're navigating through it, I just want you to consider, do you do a good enough job for the student to not get confused about that? So how did you organize the content, what you give into your students? Your lectures, are your lectures simply a PowerPoint with voice narration? Or are your lectures a 2-hour of you in front of a classroom, talking with poor audio, etc.? Is your course best organized in topics sections or by weeks sections, or are you just simply going to use learning modules that are self-contained, where you are going to create, produce, and provide your own content development? And then the last part of the content is, how are you assuring that there is the teacher-to-student flow of information? Are you also using email, and how are you using your email? Are you using internal communication for your learning management system? How are students getting information from you? How are students getting information back to you? So that's part of the content, and having these items covered. Then the next one is assignments. Okay, and in assignments now, we saw that in content is what you, the instructor, give the students. Assignments is what students give to you. So you have your type of assignment. In this case, is it a file? Is it a presentation? Is it participation? Is it an audio? Is it a written text? Is it a PowerPoint? Is it just simply an MP3 file? If you're asking students to submit something to you, are you able to provide them with, or do they know that you may have limitations? If you're a faculty member who uses a Mac computer, but you know that 80% of the students in your class use PCs, is your Mac able to transfer and convert information sent to you from a PC so that you are able to see what the students are sending you, and for the students to be able to complete? Or are you going to tell the students that they need to somehow find a way to make their files or what they're sending to you Mac compatible so that you can see them? Are the assignments going to be done online, meaning live through the learning management system, or are you going to ask your students to mail them to you? Perhaps you're going to ask your students to email them to you, etc. But it's important to consider this, because if you're asking a student to email you a larger file, an audio file, their email service may not be able to provide it to you, or even the way that the file type is going to be sent via email. It may be sent to the spam folder. So have you considered that? And of course, the deadlines. Are the deadlines realistic? That's the word that I was looking. Sorry for the little silent moment there. Are the deadlines realistic? I was speaking earlier about, are you going to tell your students to submit on a Friday night, and you're not going to check until the following day, or the following business day? Are you going to ask your students that is better for them to submit at a particular time, even though that's the peak hour of the system, and you may not be able to access it? And how clear is it for the students that once they submit the assignment, when do they expect to get the feedback on it? And then we have assessment, okay? And I always like to talk to faculty about assessment is not just testing in an online environment. A midterm and a final, it's not the best way to really assess or to evaluate a student's learning. So ask yourself the question, how do you know the students have learned? What have you provided? What venues have you provided in the course that allow you to see how students are learning or if students have learned. Are you doing interactive and engaging, responsive activities in which if a student gets it correct, the next question is a little bit harder, but if the student gets it wrong, then the next question is a little bit easier? Are you asking students to submit personal journals in which they are not so concerned about the grammatical structure of a paper, but they simply just expressing themselves, what they're thinking, maybe analyzing their own learning style, etc. What are some of those venues that you've provided for students to tell you or to confirm that indeed they have learned? That's more of a psychological, philosophical question for you. I mentioned earlier about quality. So thus far, I've talked about the 5 components that I believe every course needs to have. Of course, there are more components, but they can be adjusted and adapted. Now, about quality, and I work with the Quality Matters rubric, and the Quality Matters rubric is 8 standards with about 41 substandards. So it comes out to be about 328 different standards. Now, I'm not going to go over them. I have provided a website here where you can just go to qualitymatters.org and get the standards. But in general, the 8 standards in the Quality Matters, okay, they could be a little bit too much. I'm not going to deny it. And unless you are doing a fully online course that meets state requirements and federal accreditation issues and stuff, then they may not all apply to you. However, based on the 5 components that I've mentioned, you have your course overview and introduction, your learning objectives. Okay, so these 2, your course overview and intro and objectives, are sort of that first component of the online course. Then you have your assessments. Then you have your content. Your interactions are part of the assessment slash assignments. Then you have now this particular 3 last ones, which is the course technology, what the students are required to do, and the Quality Matters looks at is the technology sufficient, or have you considered that the students may not have access to the technology? Do the students need to learn about the technology, etc.? Learn and support, meaning are you providing students with the ability to contact either technical support or groups in which the students are peer tutoring each other, or have you provided any sort of spaces in which if a student is struggling, how are you going to address the students struggling so that they don't fall behind? And lastly is accessibility. In this case, not just only having access to the information, but is it ADA compliant? Okay, so 8 standards with 41 substandards for about 328 different standards. And just to give you a quick idea, so on the first one, you have your course overview and introduction, and you have 1 standard with 8 substandards. So you have things, let me make it something like this. So instructions make clear how to get started. Students are introduced to the purpose and structure of the course, etiquette expectations, about discussions online, course and an instruction policy. So imagine 8 times 8, per standard, and having 41 substandards, it becomes a lot. Again, you can go to qualitymatters.org and get all the standards and take a look at what they have. It is very extensive, and I am not expecting that every online course meets the Quality Matters, but at least they have a checklist of met and not met for the standards, in which you will be able to determine if your course meets the quality standards or not. So that with quality standards. Now, have you heard of universal design? Now, when I've mentioned universal design before, the response that I get is, isn't universal design for architects? And yes, it started as an architect form in which you are trying to utilize the spaces to meet the needs of as many users as possible. And so one of the perfect examples that I find online with universal design is this particular staircase design, in which you have the stairs, right? So for people who can climb stairs is fine. You have the rails for someone who may have problem, climbing stairs. But then you also have your ramp for those who are in wheelchairs. And so this is sort of that example of, here are some stairs that are not just simply stairs, but can provide service to several different people with difficulties. Now, if we bring in universal design into an online environment, the question really becomes, do you know your students? And if you know your students, do you know if all your students are going to be able to complete all of the assignments successfully? And if not, what are you doing to provide those students with alternative ways for completing the assignments and for getting the information? Now, within accessibility, I love this graph that I like to use until I get tired of it. But as you can see, it says for a first selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. But then you have the monkey, you have a penguin, an elephant, a fish, a seal, and a dog. Technically speaking, this faculty member is complying with accessibility in the sense of, well, not with access, equal access, which means everybody gets to take the same exam. There's no exceptions. But it's not taking into consideration, I forgot the little bird, it's not taking into consideration that students may be so different that if it is so easy for a monkey to climb the tree, the rest of them are not going to be able to. So the question becomes, do you know if all of your students are going to be able to complete the assignments, the assessments, the activities without hindering any other one students? In 1985, there was a really interesting study about online assessment techniques, and it was a comparison of what the assessments are in a face-to-face class, and when that same class is taught online, what the assessments become. And the particular author discovered that there doesn't seem to be a transference of fair assessments in online instruction. And so what he discovered is, in order to have universal design sort of practices for assessment in online courses, you have to, one, identify, make the standards concise, meaning this is what is going to be, this is what you need to do, and how you need to do it. An online course should have a variety of assessment measures. There is assessment for students that may be really good at multiple choice, but there should be also be an opportunity for students that like to write. However, students who like to write may be shy, and therefore they like to write, or they write better and they communicate better on a private journal rather than they do in a public forum. So considering different measures, are there any performance-based assessment tasks? Are the tasks that are being done, does the LMS support those sort of assessments and others? And of course the equity concerns, meaning that not just giving the same exam to everybody to make it equal. So this brings me to a question that I like to everyone who is teaching, period, ask themselves, and that is, have you considered your learners? I believe that if you know your students, you will know how they learn. And if you know how they learn, you will know how to instruct. So how do you think this applies to you? Going from universal design and going from the ADDIE model, understanding that in a class you may have half of your students be interpersonal students, half of, 25% of them be linguistic and verbal, people who really talk a lot and they love. You may have one or two that are logical, mathematical. You may have one that is visual, or that learns through visuals and space. How have you designed your course to meet the possibility of each of these learning style needs for your students? We don't, of course, have to answer that right now, but this is just for you. So having all of this, having discussed about the different 5 components that I believe are necessary in an online course, along with universal design, quality matters, the ADDIE model for development, and finally on assessment, I want to go through a review. And I would like to know, okay, where you answer some of these. Okay, and so the first question, is, are you comfortable with the technology being used? I hope you answer yes with this. If you have been asked to teach an online course, even though the course is being developed and it's being developed by another faculty member, and they told you, you're teaching this course, is already developed, you don't have to do anything else. Well, are you comfortable with the technology being used? Okay. Do you know your students? Do you know which students you're going to get? Do you know what kind of learning styles these students have? Okay. Are you familiar with the content of the course? Is this a course that you've taught face-to-face for many, many years, and you're absolutely in the field and you know what is going on? Or is this just a new course that you're filling in? Again, these are your own personal answers. Nobody can hear you. This is archived recording, so don't worry about it. Have you included the 5 components of the online course? If you go through your current online course, can you identify those 5 components? Have you provided an opportunity for reflection, discussion, and participation for your students? Or is this a course in which you are doing information push? You give the students everything that you think they need, they take an exam, and then you're done. Okay. Would you be able to assess student learning at several stages of the course? If you're in a quarter system, what I like to suggest to my faculty is every 2 weeks, at minimum, have some sort of a feedback survey, or at least to use something that our Blackboard management system offers, which is a course dashboard, which is what they call it, the early warning system, to see how many times the students are logging in, how much time students are spending in the course, where are they navigating to. Perhaps read the discussions and see if the students are asking questions about content, or perhaps provide them at every other week journal in which the students are able to provide any sort of feedback on frustrations or issues that they may be encountering with the course, with you, with the content, etc. So all of this, either both formative and summative assessments, putting them together, and are you able to assess the student learning at several stages of the course, not just waiting until the midterm in week 5 and then realizing that there's no way that a student can now go from a D or a C- to a passing grade by the final, but believing, well, that's the student's problem. Okay. Have you taken into account the time that it will take to prepare, collect, grade, and return assignments? This is on your end. So this is specifically for faculty. When you put all of these elements on paper, it looks fantastic to you. It looks fantastic to your chair, your dean, and to your colleagues, and said, "Wow, this is a well put course." However, have you considered how much time it's going to take you to grade all of the assignments, to be able to provide feedback to students, perhaps to use some of the automated functions of your learning management system or your website, etc., so that certain things are graded for you. But how much time are you going to spend on both preparing, let's say, your videos, introduction videos, or your lecture videos, etc., edit them, post them, and then all of the different assessments, when they get back to you, are you going to have enough time to fully and thoroughly grade them and give them back to students, etc. The next issue, or the next question is, have you checked your quality matter standards, and do you meet some of those quality matter standards? At least 5 of the 8 major standards that I brought in today? Okay. Are you going to be a passive or active participant in the student's learning? Is this going to be a course that pretty much you believe it's, it teaches itself? Students just simply log in, navigate through the course, look at the different reading assignments they have to do, they participate, they take a quiz, and they're done, and pretty much you just never show up? Or are you going to provide components, not components, but avenues throughout the course in which the students will get to know you, in which you will get to know your students and know how they're learning and whether or not you're actually teaching them? And then lastly, I'm a believer, the many years that I've spent working with technology, I know that it will fail at one time or another. Regardless, it will fail. Are you preparing a backup plan in case of technology failure? Now I want you to have this in mind. This is my little bit of me to you, and that is, we have to learn, and when I say we, is the faculty, administrators, IT staff, etc., that there is a big difference of learning from technology versus learning with technology. Okay? In an online or blended course, technology is not the focus. Learning is. Just remember, you don't start to enjoy riding a bike until you don't have to think about how to ride it. If technology is becoming an issue for you, it hinders the limits what you can and cannot do in your course, then truly you're focusing more on the technology component rather than the learning component of it. So just have that in mind. I want you as an instructor and your students as students to enjoy the course rather than to have to worry about how the technology in the course is working. Having said that, thank you very much. Again, my name is Mauricio with Academic Technology and Innovation from California State University, San Bernardino. Here's my email address in case that you want to just shoot me an email, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, observations, I'm open. Again, thank you for spending some time with me. I hope you continue to enjoy this beautiful Southern California weather. Get outside, go for a hike, or ride a bike, and good luck with your course. Thank you.